American broadcast journalist Walter Cronkite, who often was referred to as the most trusted man in America, covered some historic events. He was in World War II, he reported on the Nuremberg trials, he was in Vietnam, but he maintained that one of his first reporting jobs for United Press International, 1937, left a bigger impact on him than any other event that he covered. And this was the tragic explosion of a school in 1937 in New London, Texas. Now, in those days, Texas was in the midst of the oil boom. And when you take oil from the ground, it often comes mixed with natural gas. Natural gas was not needed in those days because there was enough oil available, and it was mostly burned off. And it was also made available to anyone who wanted it. Well, this school in New London, Texas, wanted it because they had put in 72 heaters, gas heaters in the school, and they had patched into a gas line from a gasoline manufacturer where the refuse natural gas was being conveyed to be flared off, but they captured some of it for their heaters. Now, natural gas, which is mostly methane, has no smell. Well, it turned out that there was a leak in the pipe, and there were large crawl spaces underneath the building where the gas had built up. And it is believed that a spark from an electric sander in one of the industrial workshops in the school was enough to set off an explosion. It was devastating. It blew the roof off, it blew the walls apart, and about 300 students and teachers were instantly killed, and many, many others were injured. And Cronkite described how he had seen parents digging with their hands through the debris looking for their children, and rescuers carrying away maimed bodies, which were essentially unrecognizable. It was just a tragic event, but it did have a bit of a silver lining, this cloud, because after this happened, laws were passed mandating all gas producing companies to include an odorant in the gas so that any leak could be immediately detected. Now, obviously, for such an odorant, you want to have something that has a very potent smell so that you can use very little of it. And sulfur compounds called thiols or mercaptans fit the bill. I mean, we're familiar with the smell of rotten eggs and cabbage and skunks. These are all sulfur compounds. And these days, ethyl mercaptan or tertiary butyl mercaptan are added to natural gas to make sure that any leak is detected. But it all goes back to that tragic day in 1937. Today, there's a museum in New London, Texas, that commemorates the events of that horrible day. And believe it or not, in that museum, there's a telegram from Adolf Hitler, who sent his regrets for the death of the children. This was the same Hitler who would go on to murder thousands of times more children than were killed in the 1937 disaster. And that for today is our sad Cup of Joe.